What is going on, guys? So today we're going to be discussing some lies that Shawn Baker has been caught in spreading earlier this week. If you haven't seen my recent video covering him and his inconsistent criticisms of epidemiology, I highly advise you watch it before this video. However, it's not totally necessary. Shawn Baker has recently made this post on Twitter and Instagram. On Twitter, it says, "Fun fact, numerous studies have now shown consistent relationships between plant-based diets and significantly increased fracture rates," followed by these two images, one of non-vegan bones and vegan bones. And his post on Instagram is pretty much the same. So where to begin? First of all, these images are not from any of the studies Shawn cites, nor is the second image of vegan bones. If you reverse image search them, you will find that they are from a NASA page on bone mineral loss when in a reduced gravity environment. So it appears that Shawn is trying to mislead his audience with pictures of two sets of bones, claiming that the set of bones with bone mineral loss are vegan bones. I want you to think for a second how people's minds tend to work on social media today. I mean, just look at Shawn's Instagram version of this post. From the time I'm recording this video, it has over 20,000 likes. So Shawn's fan base, and just people in general who hold extremely silly beliefs in regard to vegan nutrition, are going to view these pictures deceivingly posted by Shawn and think, wow, those are vegan bones, and just move on with their day. The fact is that most people do not go out of their way to fact check things or reverse image search pictures they find online to confirm the images are indeed what they are being reported to be. Not to mention that people all over social media are motivated to find content which confirms their biases. So now we have a bunch of people who have not fact checked this misleading post, sharing it around, convincing other people who do not fact check posts that this is a real image of vegan bones. Now, what kind of dishonest scum do you need to be to initiate this process of misleading information being spread? This is the kind of behavior that makes me much less inclined to believe Shawn when he explains why exactly he was stripped of his medical license. Another example of his dishonesty is him sharing an article concerning an infant who was fed an almond milk-based diet and attributing this entire story to veganism, even though the article makes no mention of the parent being vegan or anything to do with veganism. Now on to the study that Shawn posted underneath the tweet. Before taking a look at the study, let's not forget what I covered in my last video on Shawn concerning his attitude toward epidemiological studies. He views them as garbage regardless of the results and not even science. So presumably, the study that Shawn cites to defend the notion that vegans are at a higher chance of bone fractures won't be epidemiology. Well, the study was epidemiology. So we have Shawn trying to tear down vegans with a study whose methodology, in his view, makes the study garbage. But hey, anything to tear down the vegans, screw epistemic consistency. If I find epidemiology that goes against vegans, I'm gonna cite it, and all the epidemiology going against meat eating, I'm not gonna cite, and I'm gonna call complete garbage. Before investigating problems with this specific study, let me just share a couple more instances of Shawn Baker sharing epidemiology to support his views, even though he thinks that epidemiology isn't even science and garbage regardless of the results. Alrighty, now I do plan on covering some of the issues with this study. However, Dr. Avi has done a much better job than I could in going over its issues. I will be linking an hour video he released with Vegan Gains covering the limitations of this paper, but if you're short on time, here is a basic summary of the issues with this paper. But still, really, if you have time, please watch it. It's a very informative video. Now, first off, there was zero consideration and therefore adjustment for vitamin D intake, which is obviously important to consider because low vitamin D intake is a strong risk factor for poor bone health. Secondly, the authors were not too transparent about what statistical tests they ran when adjusting for confounding factors, not even in the supplementary material of the paper. Now, we can infer by the way in which the authors describe particular categories of confounders that they used a stratification-based adjustment. Stratification just means the arrangement or classification of something into different groups. So an example of doing this in this paper could be taking, say, all the vegans and meat eaters with a BMI of 25. So you have a group of vegans with a BMI of 25 and a group of meat eaters with a BMI of 25. You do this so you don't have BMI vary between the two groups. You then calculate the relative risk of having, say, bone fractures between the two groups. This would be an example of a stratification-based adjustment when trying to adjust for BMI between the meat eating group and the vegan group. So one of the main issues with this paper is that they assume that the relationship between BMI and bone fracture risk is a linear one. This mistake was also made in regards to calcium intake and bone fracture risk. Both of these relationships are not linear. This led to a portion of the adjustment being on levels of BMI and calcium intake where we know that risk does not go up. So just pertaining to BMI and fracture risk, Here's an example from Avi of a stratification-based adjustment in different areas that would have been more sensible to do. Those are some of the main problems with the study, but trust me, if you're still confused at this point in the video, just go watch the full video in which Avi breaks everything down. I'll have it linked in the pinned comment and description. He starts from the ground up in his explanation, and there's a good reason the video is over an hour long. There's also other issues with the study that Avi covers outside of what has been broadly discussed here. So not only does the full video further elaborate on what has been discussed here, but it also delves into other issues with the paper. Oh, and just one thing I'd like to mention that's a little bit ironic given what Shawn Baker said in his tweet. At a BMI of 22.5 or above, vegans actually had the lowest risk of hip fractures, but you know, Shawn isn't gonna mention that. All right, guys, that's the end of my video. Again, if you have time, please watch the full video from Avi in Vegan Gains. It's very informative, and if you want to learn more about statistics and research methodology, it's just a great watch overall. Thank you so much for watching. If you support my work and want to get early access to it, you can click the link in the pinned comment and support me on Patreon. And if you don't know, I do have a book going over most, if not all, of the anti-vegan arguments you're going to hear online. If you want to get that as well, that'll be linked in the pinned comment. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
Dude.
Fuck off, I don't want anything to do with you. Don't ever speak to me again. You're a fucking piece of shit.
Even vegans don't get your weird, stupid wannabe sense of irony here. Who's your audience? Nobody gets these dumb jokes. Dude,